Hey everyone, this is Des. You're listening to the Wellness Project with Des, powered by the Spotlight Coalition, and you are listening to episode number 57. On today's episode, I would like to talk to you about things that you can do when you're having a hard time or things you could do when everything seems to be going wrong. So, I want to talk to you about this today because I had this experience over the weekend. So, for months now, I have been planning a trip for Labor Day weekend to go to Mesa Verde National Park. And a friend of mine was coming in to join me from New York. And from the moment this trip was supposed to start, everything started going wrong. And I was having a really, really hard time. I think when things like that happen and just nothing seems to go right, that we get in this really negative place and it's hard to stay positive and hopeful. And I was in that place over the weekend. So I just wanted to talk to you about things that I did to help me in that situation. I did have a hard time. I did feel myself slipping into negativity and just that exaggerated thinking that it was the end of the world and the trip was ruined and we had to go home and things like that. I think it's very easy to slip into those exaggerated, all or nothing kind of thoughts. I don't want to get too much into it, but basically, like our car broke down, my friend's flight got canceled. We were in a tiny, tiny small town. They didn't have Uber or Lyft. So we were literally stranded. We called the only cab company in this tiny little town. I think like 100 people live there. We called the cab company. They said they would be there in 10 minutes. They never showed up. We kept calling, calling, calling. They weren't answering. So we were literally stranded until midnight. And I got really, really sick. So I was sick all weekend. And Sunday, I was the sickest. I had a really hard time. I went on like an hour hike. And then the rest of the day, pretty much, I was in bed. Mark and my friend Matt, they went out to dinner and I couldn't go. I had to stay home. So I was really sick. And as for the car, Mark's car insurance company was going to tow the car. So they called us the day after it broke down. We had to leave it stranded in a parking lot. They called us that they were towing it. And the tow truck company called us and said that they towed it to the only auto repair shop in the town and that they had a sign on the door that they were closed for the weekend for Labor Day. Mark and Matt spent almost the entire day on Saturday fixing the car themselves. So they had to rent a U-Haul because the only two rental car companies in town were closed for the weekend. So we had to rent a U-Haul for the weekend. And they had to drive that back and forth between an auto parts store and the car that was in some random college parking lot. That's where we broke down. So, yeah, so Saturday we ended up missing two of our reservations that I had made for the weekend. So it was just everything was going wrong. It was very disappointing and I was having a hard time. So there's a few things that I did over the weekends to try to help myself feel better and to feel calm. And I thought that I would share those coping skills with you so that you can use them when you're having a hard time. So I definitely tried my best to stay grounded in the present moment. I felt my mind kind of wandering to the future, to the next day. I kept thinking to myself, oh, we have to just tow the car back to Denver. This weekend is shot. We just have to go home. So I was also trying to be aware that my thoughts were very exaggerated and maybe unrealistic. So I tried to stay grounded in the present moment. I tried to do deep breathing, which I actually honestly do have a hard time with. It doesn't always help me, but I try to be mindful of my breath. So I tried deep breathing. Our Airbnb was on a beautiful property. It was on a farm. So there were lots of horses all around. Our Airbnb host had three horses in the back, a baby horse and two adults. And then next door, they had two horses. So it was on this beautiful, beautiful farm. There was a pond that we walked to. So I spent a lot of time outside the whole day when Mark and Matt were fixing the car. I stayed back at the Airbnb because I knew that it would just cause me a lot of anxiety and stress. So I stayed outside. I journaled outside. I brought my notebook. I sat at their chair and I overlooked the farm and looked at the horses. I went and played with the horses. So if you have an animal available, a cat or a dog, in this case, it was horses, definitely pet or play with the animals because that is really helpful and calming. I took a nap partly because I didn't feel good, but also because I was so stressed. So I did take a nap and I drank some tea. That was also partly because I was very sick, but that did help too. It was like a very calming lavender tea. So that was very nice. And I read a book. And something that really helps me is I'm a venter. So I was venting to my sister. I was texting her off the hook. I called my mom. I was venting to her. I was just stressed, and venting really helps me. So reach out to friends or family if you know that that is something that helps you. And something else I did was listen to a podcast. I really love a certain podcast. So I was like, you know what? I'm just home. I'm stressed out. Let me just focus on this podcast and listen to that. And hopefully that will help put me in a better mood because I find it to be very inspirational. So yeah, those are some of the things that I did, and they actually did really help me. I know it's kind of a lot of things, but in combination, doing all these things throughout the whole weekend helped me to not feel as stressed or anxious and out of control. So I hope that these coping skills are something that can help you. I did make a PDF that you can download with all these coping skills listed on it. So click the link in the show notes and you will be able to download and or print that PDF. I hope that these coping skills were helpful to you. And I think it's just helpful to know that, even though we might plan something to a T, life happens, things just don't always go right, especially when you're traveling in a small little town, obstacles happen, but it's still worth it. And there's still nice moments within that horrible time. Like it was really nice going for a walk to the pond. It was very nice playing with the horses. Those were really things that I enjoyed a lot. So it's always good to try to look on the bright side and stay a little positive through these really hard times. And I know it might not sound like it was the worst, horrible time. Like, obviously, other people are going through worse things, especially right now. But I was very stressed. And I think that that's okay. Our bodies and minds do react to stress in a certain way. And I don't think it's very helpful to compare our stress or hard times in our life to other people. Our pain and our hurt and our stress is our own. And we do have that experience, even though other people may be going through a hard time. So take care of yourself and be gentle with yourself. And you don't need to convince yourself that, other people have it worse. You shouldn't worry. You should also take care of yourself through those stressful times because our bodies do react to stress. So, like I said, go to the show notes, download and print that coping skill list. And I hope those things help you. All right. I will see you next week. Have a great week.